Can you be brave for 2 more minutes? Ethan Cooper whispered to himself, hands shaking, standing in the dairy aisle of Freshway Market with a basket of groceries that spelled 6 letters no one else had seen. B-E-L-P-M-E. Help me. He was 6 years old, taken from a courthouse 2 hours ago, drugged, told his mother would die if he spoke, scheduled to be sold in 24 hours for $180,000. And Karen Holloway, the cashier scanning his items, had exactly 3 minutes before the handler outside finished his cigarette to notice what 47 other people that day had missed: a child screaming for help without making a sound. What she did next mobilized 60 Hells Angels, exposed a trafficking ring inside Tennessee's family courts, and proved that one observant cashier and one brave 6-year-old could save 20 lives with 6 grocery items and the courage to spell the truth. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this. Stay with us until the very end, because what this little boy did will stay with you forever. And let us know in the comments what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel around the world. Can you be brave for 2 more minutes? Those 8 words whispered by a 6-year-old to himself in the dairy aisle of Freshway Market, Cedar Falls, Tennessee, weren't loud enough for anyone else to hear. Ethan Cooper stood there, small fingers gripping the cold metal handle of a plastic shopping basket that weighed almost nothing but felt like it carried the whole world inside. 4 items already, 1 more to go. Then the duplicate that would make it mean something. His Cub Scout uniform felt wrong now. He'd worn it to court this morning because his mama said it might help. Show the judge he came from a good home. Show them he was a good boy. The blue shirt with his packed .22 neckerchief, the belt loop awards his den leader had given him 3 weeks ago, including the one for safety awareness. That training was the only reason Ethan was still thinking instead of crying. His hands trembled when he reached for the milk. The gallon jug was cold and heavy and almost slipped, but he caught it, set it carefully in the basket. That was M. Bread, eggs, lemon, pickles, milk. B-E-L-P-M. Now he needed the second E. Ethan looked through the store window. Travis Dunn stood 15 feet from the entrance. Gray polo shirt, khaki pants, phone pressed to his ear, cigarette between his fingers. The courthouse security officer who'd given Ethan apple juice this morning. The juice that made everything go fuzzy and wrong. The man who'd told him, "Your mama signed the papers. She doesn't want you anymore." The man who'd locked him in a car trunk for 20 minutes and then dragged him into a lady's basement and said, "You make one sound and I call my friend and your mama's dead by dinner." Ethan had maybe 2 minutes before Travis came back inside. 2 more minutes of being smart instead of scared. He walked back to the dairy cooler, forced his legs to move normal. Not running, not looking scared. Cub Scouts are brave. Cub Scouts use their brains. His den leader's voice played in his head like a recording. "Boys, if you're ever in real trouble and you can't talk, you find another way to communicate. You use what's around you. Anything can be a signal if you're smart enough." Ethan couldn't talk. Travis had made that real clear. "You tell anyone, kid. Anyone at all. I make one phone call. Your mama's dead before the sun goes down. You understand me?" So Ethan couldn't tell, but he could spell. He grabbed the second egg carton, 12 large white eggs, identical to the first one already in his basket. Nobody needs 2 cartons of eggs. That was the whole point. This wasn't a little kid buying random stuff. This was a code, a message, a scream for help spelled out in groceries because screaming out loud would get his mother killed. Ethan carried the basket toward the checkout lanes. His heart was beating so hard it hurt his chest. He could feel it in his ears, in his throat, in his fingertips where they gripped the handle. Lane 2. The cashier was a woman with sandy brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. Kind face, warm eyes. Name tag said, Karen. Please see it, Ethan prayed. Please, please see it. 40 feet from the dairy cooler to lane 2. Each step felt like the floor was made of mud. Heavy, slow. The basket handle dug into his palms. He squeezed tighter because the pain kept him from floating away into the scared place in his head. One customer ahead of him, old lady buying cat food and bananas, counting out exact change from a coin purse, taking forever. Ethan waited, breathed through his nose, in and out, in and out. Stay calm, stay smart. The old lady finished, shuffled away with her bag. Ethan stepped forward, set the basket on the conveyor belt with both hands because one hand alone was shaking too hard. The items rolled forward slightly. Bread, eggs, lemon, pickles, mustard, eggs. Karen smiled at him. Hey there, sweetie. Shopping for your dad today? She glanced toward the window. She'd noticed Travis. That was good. That was awareness. Yes, ma'am. Ethan's voice came out barely above a whisper. One word answers. Can't say more. Travis could see through the glass if he turned around. Karen began scanning. Practiced movements. Easy rhythm. Beep, bread. Beep, eggs. Beep, lemon. Ethan watched her face, desperate, pleading with his eyes. Every person he'd passed in this store today, the stock boy, the lady in produce, the man getting coffee, the teenager on her phone, 40-some people, and not one of them had looked at him, really looked at him. Beep, pickles. Beep, mustard. Karen reached for the last item. Her hand touched the second egg carton. Her fingers paused. Beep, eggs again. And then Karen Holloway stopped moving. Ethan saw it happen. The exact second her expression changed. Her eyes went from the register screen to the items on the belt to his face. Back to the screen, back to the items. Her lips moved slightly, reading the first letters. B-E-L-P-M-E. Her breath caught, not loud, not obvious enough for Travis to notice from outside, but Ethan heard it. That tiny, sharp intake of air that meant she understood. Karen's warm brown eyes met his. She wasn't smiling anymore, wasn't doing the casual cashier thing. She was looking at him, really looking. And Ethan saw it in her face. She knew. 2 egg cartons, huh? Karen's voice stayed light, easy, but something underneath had shifted. Urgent. Controlled. You must really love eggs. Ethan's throat closed up. He nodded. Didn't trust his voice not to break into 1,000 pieces. Let me just... Karen's hand moved below the counter. Ethan heard the faint buzz of a phone vibrating. One-handed texting while her other hand hovered over the scanner. Oh, my scanner's acting up today. So sorry about the wait, sweetie. She wasn't looking at the scanner. She was looking at her phone. Typing fast, thumb moving in sharp little bursts. Ethan's heart soared so hard it almost made him dizzy. She was calling someone, getting help. The code worked. Ugh, register froze. Karen picked up the store phone. Didn't actually press any buttons before speaking, but Ethan could tell she was faking it. Hey, Mike, register 2 is glitching again. Can you come take a look? She hung up, pressed a button. The receipt printer whirred. She tore off the paper, wrote something on the back while pretending to check the total, then slid it across the counter face down. Sorry about the delay, hun, Karen said louder now, for Travis's benefit. Total's $18.42. Ethan picked up the receipt with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. Glanced at Travis through the window. Still on his phone. Cigarette almost done. Not paying close attention. Ethan flipped the receipt over. In Karen's handwriting, quick and messy, but clear. Help is coming. Stay brave. You're safe now. The tears came then. Silent. Just 2 rolling down his cheeks before he could stop them. He wiped them fast with the back of his hand. Karen reached across the counter and squeezed his hand. Just for a second. Warm, gentle, the way his mama would. Your dad can come in if he wants, Karen said clearly. Testing. Ethan shook his head so hard his neck hurt. He's fine outside. 30 seconds later, the store entrance doors slid open. A man walked in, 6'3", 250 pounds, shaved head, brown beard braided to his chest, full sleeve tattoos covering both arms, black leather vest with patches that made Ethan's stomach clench because everything he'd ever been told about men who looked like this said danger. Hell's Angels, Tennessee chapter, a serpent wrapped around his right forearm. On his left arm, a name, Sophie, 2009 to 2017. Below it, a Marine Corps eagle, globe, and anchor. He moved like someone trained for combat, controlled, purposeful, eyes scanning the store the way Ethan's den leader had taught them to scan for exits in an emergency. Systematic, missing nothing. He walked past Ethan toward the produce section, didn't look at him directly, just another customer grabbing an apple. But Ethan caught Karen's slight nod, caught the man's barely visible acknowledgement, a dip of the chin, nothing more. That was her brother, the one she'd texted, the one who was here to help. Dean Rattler Holloway had covered 80 feet from his auto repair shop to Freshway Market in 12 seconds flat when his sister's text hit his phone. Code red. Child at my register lane 2. Spelled help with groceries. Handler outside gray polo. Come now. For 8 years, Rattler had been watching this parking lot, watching this store, waiting for exactly this moment. Because 8 years ago, his 7-year-old daughter Sophie had been taken from this same parking lot. Vanished in 40 seconds while her mother loaded groceries in the trunk. One moment, Sophie was standing by the cart. The next moment, gone. The police investigation lasted 9 days. Sheriff Wayne Caldwell closed it himself. These cases either resolve quick or they don't resolve at all. I'm sorry, Mr. Holloway. But Rattler knew. He'd known for 8 years that the investigation had been killed on purpose, that someone in the system had protected whoever took Sophie, that his daughter was out there somewhere, alive, waiting for her father to find her. And now, right now, he was looking at a 6-year-old boy in a Cub Scout uniform who'd spelled help with groceries, who had a handler smoking outside, who was terrified but still thinking clearly. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for since the worst day of his life. Rattler moved to the magazine rack near lane 2, close enough to hear, far enough to look natural. He grabbed a fishing magazine, pretended to flip through it. Karen finished the fake scanner troubleshooting, made change, bagged the groceries slow and deliberate, stretching every second. There you go, sweetie, she said. You have a good day now. Ethan took the bag, walked toward the exit, small, fragile, 6 years old and braver than any adult in that store. Rattler waited 5 seconds, set the magazine down, followed. He walked past Ethan just as the boy pushed through the exit doors. Their eyes met for half a second. Rattler saw everything in that look. Terror, hope, desperation, and something else. Trust. A 6-year-old choosing to trust a man covered in tattoos and leather because right now, that man was the only person in the world who'd shown up. Rattler gave the smallest nod. One motion, barely visible. You're not alone, kid. Outside, Travis Dunn dropped his cigarette, ground it out with his shoe, looked at Ethan. Got the food? Yes, sir. Ethan's voice was steady. Incredible control for a child who'd just been crying 30 seconds ago. Car's over here. Travis put his hand on Ethan's shoulder, guiding, controlling, steering him toward a black SUV parked 30 feet away. They walked, Ethan carrying his grocery bag, Travis's hand gripping his shoulder hard enough to leave fingerprints on his collarbone. Rattler kept walking past them toward his truck. Black Chevy Silverado, Hell's Angels sticker on the rear window, parked 20 feet beyond the SUV. He climbed in, started the engine, didn't pull out. He had eyes on them. Travis opening the back door, Ethan climbing in, small body disappearing into the dark interior. Travis walking around to the driver's side, looking around once, casual, checking for witnesses. He didn't see anything unusual, just a biker sitting in a truck looking at his phone. Black SUV, Tennessee plates. Rattler memorized every digit. His phone was already in his hand, texting one-handed while his eyes stayed locked on the vehicle. The SUV pulled out of the parking lot, turned right onto Highway 27, heading north. Rattler followed. 3 car lengths back, professional distance, invisible. His phone buzzed. Tank responding. Got your text. Brother's rolling. Where we heading? Rattler typed back one-handed, eyes never leaving the SUV's taillights. Following black SUV north on 27. Kidnapped boy inside, 6 years old. Handler is Travis Dunn. Courthouse security. Judge Caldwell case. Tank, this connects to Sophie. I feel it. Get everyone. Tank's response came in 3 seconds. Everyone's coming, brother. Every last one. Don't lose that car. Rattler had no intention of losing that car. Not today. Not after 8 years of empty leads and dead ends and nights spent sitting in that parking lot, staring at the spot where Sophie had stood before the world took her away. That little boy in the Cub Scout uniform, that brave, brilliant little boy who'd used his training to spell help instead of screaming, had just given Rattler something he hadn't had in 8 years. Hope. And Rattler was going to follow it all the way to the end. The SUV turned onto Orchard Lane. Rattler stayed 3 cars back. Casual. Patient. His phone rang. He put it on speaker. Rattler, it's Deacon. Frank Reyes, 65 years old, retired FBI, 28 years of service, but the man still had contacts in every field office in the Southeast. Karen called me. She's telling me a 6-year-old spelled help with groceries, and you're following the handler's vehicle. I'm on them right now, Rattler said, voice tight, controlled. Kid's name is Ethan Cooper, taken from Harlan County Courthouse 2 hours ago during a custody hearing. Mother Jenny Cooper was fighting for custody against abusive ex-husband. Judge Caldwell ordered emergency removal. Kid got drugged and transported. Deacon was quiet for 3 seconds. Rattler could hear him thinking, processing, putting the pieces together the way only a man with 3 decades of federal investigation experience could. Nancy Caldwell, Deacon said slowly, family court judge, 18 years on the bench. If she's involved, it's not just one case, Rattler finished. It's a system. Deacon, this could be what took Sophie. Same courthouse, same type of case. Legal cover using family court. I'm calling my FBI contacts right now, Deacon said. But Rattler, you keep eyes on that vehicle. We need to know where they're taking the boy. Already on it. I'm not losing this kid. The SUV pulled into a driveway. 1134 Orchard Lane. 2-story house, white siding, quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where people wave at each other and leave their doors unlocked and never imagine what might be happening inside. Rattler drove past slowly, didn't stop, didn't look, pulled onto a side street 2 blocks east, parked where he could see the house through his side mirrors. Travis and Ethan got out of the SUV, walked to the front door. It opened before Travis knocked. A woman stood there, 50s, blonde hair pulled back, floral blouse, warm smile. The kind of woman who'd bring casserole to a church potluck. Rattler knew who she was. Linda Hargrove, Judge Caldwell's cousin. He'd been researching the Caldwell family for 7 years, had a wall in his shop covered in photos, documents, court records, newspaper clippings. He'd mapped every connection, every relative, every property. Linda Hargrove, 1134 Orchard Lane. He'd driven past this house 100 times wondering what was inside. Now he knew. Ethan glanced back once before going inside. Small head turning, eyes searching the street, looking for help, looking for the biker who'd nodded at him. Rattler was there. The door closed. Ethan disappeared inside. Rattler called Tank. His voice didn't shake, but it took effort. Send coordinates to every brother. 1134 Orchard Lane. That's the holding house. Kids inside. We're setting up surveillance perimeter. Nobody moves until FBI arrives, and we have a solid plan. Understood. Brothers are rolling now. How many you want? Everyone, Tank. Every member available. That's 60 bikes, Rattler. Then 60 bikes it is. 60 Hells Angels converging on a quiet suburban street where a 6-year-old was being held in a basement. Not for violence, not for revenge, for protection, for witness coverage, for making sure this time, the system couldn't bury the truth the way it had buried Sophie. Rattler's phone buzzed again. Karen. Is he okay? Rattler typed back. He's alive. We found the house. 60 brothers coming. FBI on the way. Your nephew's grocery code just cracked open what might be a 7-year trafficking operation, Karen. Tell me about that kid's training. Cub Scout Safety Awareness Workshop 3 weeks ago. His den leader taught them signaling, communication when you can't speak, how to ask for help without words. Smart kid, Rattler. Bravest kid I've ever seen. We're getting him out, and we're getting everyone else they've taken too. Rattler set the phone down, looked at the house through his mirror, thought about Ethan sitting in that basement alone, thought about Sophie sitting in a basement somewhere 8 years ago. Then he thought about what Ethan had done. 6 years old, drugged, threatened, told his mother would die if he spoke. And instead of giving up, instead of shutting down, instead of being a helpless victim, that boy walked into a grocery store and spelled help with bread, eggs, lemon, pickles, mustard, and eggs. 6 items, 6 letters, one message that was about to tear down everything Judge Nancy Caldwell had built. Inside 1134 Orchard Lane, Ethan sat on the basement floor with his back against the cold concrete wall. The grocery bag sat beside him. He pulled out the receipt and read Karen's words again. Help is coming. Stay brave. You're safe now. He folded it carefully and put it in his pocket, close to his body, close to his heart. Upstairs, he could hear Travis talking to Linda. Judge called. Buyers confirmed for tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Warehouse on Route 9, standard delivery, 180 for this one. He going to be a problem? Linda asked. Nah, smart kid actually. Too smart for his own good. But I told him his mama dies if he talks. Shuts him right up every time. Works like clockwork. I'll bring him dinner in an hour, Linda said. Keep him fed. Buyer doesn't like damaged goods. Ethan pulled his knees to his chest, wrapped his arms around them, made himself as small as he could. 24 hours. That's what they'd said. 24 hours and someone named Dimitri was going to come get him and take him somewhere far away and he'd never see his mama again. But Karen had seen his code, and the biker had followed them, and somewhere outside, help was coming. Ethan pressed his face against his knees and whispered the Cub Scout motto to himself like a prayer. Do your best. He'd done his best. He'd spelled it. He'd signaled. He'd been brave for longer than 2 minutes. Now he just had to be brave a little longer. Outside in the darkening Tennessee evening, motorcycles began arriving, one by one, not roaring in with noise and chaos, but rolling in quiet and disciplined, parking on side streets, taking positions in driveways, spreading out across 4 blocks like shadows. By 5 o'clock, 2 hours after Ethan spelled help with groceries, 60 Hells Angels surrounded the house at 1134 Orchard Lane. And at the FBI field office in Nashville, 40 minutes away, Special Agent Diana Reeves picked up the phone, listened to Deacon's briefing for 90 seconds, and said 6 words that would change everything. Get me every file on Judge Nancy Caldwell. Diana Reeves had been with the FBI for 14 years, and in those 14 years, she'd learned one thing that every textbook got wrong. Evil didn't hide in dark alleys. It hid behind titles, behind robes, behind gavels in courtrooms and the people society trusted most. She stared at her computer screen and felt her stomach drop. Wire had sent the files 20 minutes ago. Danny Wire Sullivan, the Hells Angels cyber forensics expert, former Army intelligence, had cracked into Harlan County's sealed court records from the back of a van parked 2 streets from the holding house. What he'd found made Diana's hands go cold. 19 sealed custody cases, 7 years, all handled by Judge Nancy Caldwell. Every single one following the same pattern like a recipe someone had written down and followed step by step. Single mothers, low income, abusive ex-husbands or ex-boyfriends filing for custody, emergency protective custody ordered by Judge Caldwell, children removed from the courtroom, records sealed within 72 hours. Mothers told their children had been placed in out-of-state foster care programs. Case closed. Move on. Nothing to see. 19 times. 19 children, and not one investigation. Not one question. Not one person in the entire Harlan County system who'd raised a hand and said, something's wrong here. Diana picked up her phone and called her supervisor. Her voice was steady, but her jaw was tight. Sir, I need authorization for immediate warrant execution. Multiple kidnapping charges, conspiracy to traffic minors, corruption charges against a sitting family court judge. We have a child currently being held at a residence in Cedar Falls, scheduled for sale in 24 hours. Her supervisor's voice came back cautious, measured, the way people in Washington always sounded when careers were at stake. A judge, Diana. You understand what you're asking me to authorize. Accusing a family court judge of trafficking children. I'm not accusing anyone, sir. I'm telling you that I have 19 identical sealed cases, offshore banking records showing $3.8 million in deposits over 7 years, and a 6-year-old boy sitting in a basement right now waiting to be sold tomorrow afternoon for $180,000. I have 50 witnesses on the ground and a victim's mother who has been trying to report this for 2 months with zero response from local law enforcement. Silence on the line. Diana could hear him breathing, could hear the calculation happening, the political math, judge, trafficking, media firestorm, congressional hearings. Sir, Diana said, and her voice dropped low, there is a little boy in a basement. He is 6 years old. He spelled help with groceries because a courthouse bailiff told him his mother would be killed if he spoke. I need those warrants and I need them now. 4 seconds of nothing. You'll have them in 20 minutes. Assemble your team. Diana hung up and started making calls. Meanwhile, at 1134 Orchard Lane, the neighborhood had transformed without anyone inside the house noticing. 60 motorcycles spread across 4 blocks. Not clustered, not obvious. 2 bikes in this driveway, 3 on that side street, 4 around the next corner. Neighbors who looked out their windows saw bikers sitting on porches, leaning against trucks, standing in small groups like they were just hanging around on a Tuesday evening. Tank stood beside his bike on Maple Court, 1 block north, radio in his hand. Every brother had checked in. Positions covered every exit, every window, every approach to the house. Listen up, Tank said into the radio, voice low and hard. Nobody approaches that house. Nobody makes contact. We are eyes only until FBI rolls in. Every person who enters that property, every vehicle that comes near, every light that turns on or off, you document it. We're building a case, not starting a war. Understood? 60 confirmations came back. Quick, disciplined, military. Hammer had positioned himself on the roof of a house 2 doors east of the target. Night vision binoculars, clear sight line to every window. He'd been there since 4:30, lying flat, patient, motionless. At 5:15, he saw Ethan through the basement window. Small figure sitting against the wall, knees pulled up to his chest. still wearing his Cub Scout uniform, arms wrapped around himself, rocking slightly. Hammer keyed his radio. Visual on the kid, basement, northeast corner. He's alive, uninjured from what I can see, alone in the room. Rattler, sitting in his truck 3 houses away, closed his eyes when he heard those words. Alive. The boy was alive. His grip on the steering wheel tightened until his knuckles went white. Copy, Rattler said. Stay on him. Don't lose sight. FBI's 40 minutes out. I'm not going anywhere, brother. Rattler set the radio down and stared at the house through his side mirror. His daughter Sophie had been alive somewhere too, 8 years ago, sitting in some room, waiting for her daddy to come. And he hadn't come. Hadn't known where she was. Hadn't been able to follow the car because there'd been no 6-year-old genius to spell out a code that cracked the whole thing open. His phone buzzed. Karen again. Jenny Cooper just called me. Ethan's mother. She's hysterical, Rattler. She went to the police station to report Ethan missing, and Sheriff Caldwell told her the judge's custody order was legal and there was nothing he could do. Told her to go home and wait for a social worker to contact her. She's sitting in her car in the police parking lot, crying. Rattler's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Sheriff Wayne Caldwell, the judge's brother. That's what I'm telling you. She tried to report her son kidnapped and the sheriff sent her home. Call her back. Tell her to stay where she is. Tell her Ethan's alive and we're getting him out. Tell her FBI is coming. Don't tell her the address. Don't tell her anything that could get back to Caldwell. Just tell her to hold on. I will, Rattler. She's falling apart. She's a mother whose child was stolen by a judge. Of course she's falling apart. But we're putting her back together tonight. I promise you that. Rattler hung up and called Deacon. Where are we with FBI? Diana Reeves is assembling a tactical team right now. Warrants are being signed as we speak. She's requesting 3 vehicles, full tactical support, arrest warrants for Travis Dunn, Linda Hargrove, and Judge Nancy Caldwell simultaneously. She doesn't want anyone tipped off. Smart woman. She's the best I've worked with in 30 years. Rattler, she pulled the sealed files wire sent. She sees the pattern. She knows this is bigger than one kid. How much bigger? She thinks Caldwell's been running this for at least 7 years, maybe longer. There's a psychologist involved too, court-appointed. Name is Dr. Robert Langley. He's been rubber stamping every evaluation, declaring mothers unfit based on fabricated assessments so Caldwell has legal cover for the removals. Rattler felt something hot and sharp rise in his chest. Langley evaluated Sophie's mother before Sophie was taken. I remember the name. He said Christine was mentally unstable, unfit parent, recommended supervised visitation only. That's why Sophie was with Christine at the store instead of at home with me. Because Langley's evaluation restricted my custody and Christine couldn't handle it alone. Deacon was quiet for a beat. Then Langley's been part of this from the beginning. They all have. The judge, the sheriff, the psychologist, the bailiff. This whole county is a machine, Deacon, and they've been grinding up children and spitting them out for 7 years. Not anymore. Tonight it stops. Inside the house, Linda Hargrove carried a plate of spaghetti down the basement stairs. Simple meal. She unlocked the door, pushed it open, found Ethan exactly where she'd expected. Against the wall, knees up, silent. Brought you dinner, honey. Her voice was sweet, warm, the voice of someone's grandmother. You need to eat. Keep your strength up. Ethan looked at the plate, looked at her. I want my mom. I know you do, sweetheart, but your mom signed the papers. She decided it was best. She didn't. Ethan's voice was small but firm. My mom would never give me up. You're lying. Linda's smile didn't change, but her eyes did. Something cold moved behind them. Eat your dinner, Ethan. Where are you sending me tomorrow? Somewhere nice. A family that wants you very much. My mom wants me. Linda set the plate on the floor, straightened up. The grandmotherly warmth drained from her face like water running out of a sink. Eat, or don't. Makes no difference to me either way, but you'd be smart to keep quiet and do what you're told. She walked out, locked the door. Her footsteps faded up the stairs. Ethan didn't touch the food. He pressed his hand against his pocket where Karen's receipt was folded. Help is coming. Stay brave. He held onto those words like a rope, keeping him from falling into a dark place. Upstairs, Travis sat at the kitchen table, eating his own plate of spaghetti and scrolling through his phone like a man after an ordinary shift at work. Linda poured herself a glass of wine and sat across from him. Kids asking questions, she said. They always do. This one's different, Travis. He's thinking. You can see it in his eyes. He's not shutting down like the others. Travis shrugged. Doesn't matter. Dimitri picks him up tomorrow. 12 hours on a boat. Kids in Romania by Thursday. What's he gonna do? Think his way off a cargo ship? I'm just saying, he tried that thing at the grocery store. Travis's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What thing? The grocery code. You mentioned it earlier. That was nothing. Kid grabbed some random food. I watched him the whole time. Nobody noticed anything. You're sure? Linda, I've done this 20 times. I know what I'm doing. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever notices. Linda sipped her wine. The judge would be very unhappy if something went wrong with this one. Dimitri's paying premium, $180. He specifically requested a boy under 7. Nothing's going wrong. Relax. Neither of them noticed that Hammer, 2 houses away, had captured every word through the directional microphone aimed at their window. Neither of them knew that Wire, in his van around the corner, was recording the audio feed and simultaneously cross-referencing Travis Dunn's phone records with Judge Caldwell's office line, finding 47 calls between them in the past 3 months alone. And neither of them had any idea that at that very moment, 3 black SUVs were loading up at the Nashville FBI field office, carrying 12 federal agents, 3 arrest warrants, and a search warrant that would blow their world apart. At 6:15, Wire called Tank with an update that made every brother on the perimeter go quiet. I got into Caldwell's financial records. Offshore account in the Caymans under a shell company called Orchard Holdings. $3.8 million deposited over 7 years in increments matching the timing of each sealed custody case. She's getting paid between $150 and $220 per child. There's a second account connected to a man named Dmitry Volkov, based in Atlanta. Import-export business as his front. He's the buyer. He's the middleman between Caldwell and overseas clients. Tank processed this in silence. Then he asked the question that had been burning in Rattler's chest for 8 years. Can you find the other kids? The 19 that came before Ethan? That's what I'm working on. Volkov keeps records. I found partial files. Names, dates, transaction amounts. If FBI gets Volkov to cooperate, and with federal trafficking charges he'll have every reason to cooperate, they can trace all of them. Including Sophie Holloway? Wire paused. I found a transaction from September 2017. 7-year-old female. Brown hair. Physical description matches Sophie. Sold to a buyer in Bucharest for $160. That's all I have so far. But Rattler, if Volkov has the full records, there's a real chance. Tank looked across the dark street toward Rattler's truck. He could see Rattler's silhouette behind the wheel, motionless, waiting. Don't tell him yet, Tank said. Not until we have confirmation. I'm not giving that man hope and then taking it away. He's already been through enough. Understood. At 6:40, Rattler's radio crackled. Hammer's voice, urgent. Movement at the house. Someone's pulling into the driveway. White pickup truck, Tennessee plates. Rattler grabbed his binoculars, focused on the driveway. A man got out of the white truck. 50s, gray hair, well-dressed. Rattler recognized him immediately. Sheriff Wayne Caldwell. That's the sheriff, Rattler said into the radio, his voice dropping to something dangerous and low. Wayne Caldwell, Judge's brother, the one who buried Sophie's case, the one who sent Jenny Cooper home today when she tried to report her son missing. Tank came back fast. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. Document only. FBI is 25 minutes out. Rattler's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from 8 years of rage compressed into a single moment, watching the man who destroyed his family walk casually into a house where another child was being held for sale. Sheriff Caldwell walked inside. The door closed behind him. Hammer, you got audio? Rattler asked. Picking it up now, stand by. 3 seconds passed. Then Hammer's voice came back tight. Rattler, you need to hear this. Hammer patched the audio feed through. Travis's voice came through first, muffled but clear enough. Sheriff, good to see you. Everything's on track. Then Caldwell's voice, casual, relaxed, the voice of a man discussing business over dinner. Patricia wants to make sure there's no loose ends. The mother filed a report at my station today. I handled it, told her the custody order was legal, sent her home. She going to be a problem? Linda asked. Jenny Cooper? Caldwell laughed. The sound of it made Rattler's stomach turn. She's a 29-year-old single mom working 2 jobs. No money, no lawyer since Morrison dropped the case. Who's she going to call? Nobody listens to women like her. That's why we pick them. Smart, Travis said. Same as always. Same as always, Caldwell confirmed. Dimitri lands in Atlanta tonight. He'll drive up tomorrow morning. 3 o'clock transfer at the Route 9 warehouse. I'll have a patrol car blocking the access road so nobody stumbles in. Standard protocol. What about after? Linda asked. The mother's going to keep pushing. Let her push. I'll bury the report, file it as a resolved custody matter. In 2 weeks, nobody remembers. In a month, she's just another crazy woman making accusations nobody believes. That's how this works, Linda. That's how it's always worked. Rattler turned off the radio. He sat in his truck in the dark and let those words sink into his bones. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. That was the system. The machine. The judge signs the order. The bailiff takes the child. The cousin holds them. The sheriff buries the evidence. The psychologist provides the cover. And the mothers, the Jenny Coopers and the Christine Holloways, they get told, nobody believes you. Go home. Stop making trouble. 19 times this had worked. 19 children swallowed up by a system designed to protect them. 19 mothers told they were crazy, unfit, disposable. But not this time. Not number 20. Because number 20 was a 6-year-old who'd spelled help with groceries. And number 20 had been seen by a cashier who'd been watching for 8 years. And that cashier had a brother who'd been searching for his stolen daughter since the day the sheriff told him to stop looking. Rattler keyed his radio one more time. Tank, you got all that? Every word, brother. Wire recorded the whole thing. The sheriff just confessed to obstruction, conspiracy, and evidence tampering on tape. Diana Reeves is going to have a very good night. Add him to the arrest list. I want Caldwell in handcuffs tonight. Already texting Deacon. He's relaying to FBI in real time. At 7:05, Diana Reeves received the audio recording on her encrypted phone while sitting in the lead SUV heading south on Interstate 40. She listened to it twice. The second time she paused it after Caldwell's voice said, "That's how it's always worked," and stared out the windshield for a long moment. Then she called the U.S. Marshal's office. "I need an additional arrest warrant. Sheriff Wayne Caldwell, Harlan County. Charges: obstruction of justice, conspiracy to traffic minors, accessory to kidnapping, evidence tampering. He's currently inside the target residence. I want him taken with the others." "That's a county sheriff, Agent Reeves." "I'm aware of his title. I'm also aware that he's sitting in a house with a kidnapped child planning tomorrow's sale, while his sister, a sitting judge, counts her offshore millions. Get me the warrant. You'll have it before you arrive." Diana hung up and looked at the agent driving. How far out are we? 20 minutes. Make it 15. Back at the house, Sheriff Caldwell stayed for 30 minutes. Ate a plate of Linda's spaghetti. Talked about his fishing trip planned for the weekend. Laughed about a speeding ticket he'd written that morning. Normal conversation. Light. Easy. As if there wasn't a 6-year-old locked in the basement below his feet, waiting to be shipped across an ocean. At 7:20, Caldwell walked to the basement door, unlocked it, went down. Ethan looked up, saw the uniform, the badge, the gun on his hip. For one wild second, hope surged through his chest. A police officer. Police officers help people. Police officers save kids. Then Caldwell crouched down and looked at him with flat, empty eyes that held nothing. No warmth, no concern, no recognition that he was looking at a child. You're going to be a good boy tomorrow, right, Ethan? Ethan pressed his back harder against the wall. Something in the man's face told him this wasn't rescue. This was the opposite of rescue. A nice man is coming to pick you up. He's going to take you on a trip. You're going to go with him and not make any trouble. If you make trouble, Travis calls your mama. You remember what happens then? Ethan nodded. His throat had closed up completely. Good boy. Smart boy. Caldwell stood up, straightened his uniform, adjusted his badge like he was checking himself in a mirror. Get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. He walked back upstairs, locked the door. Ethan sat in the dark and shook. Not from cold, from the understanding that the man with the badge wasn't there to save him. The man with the badge was part of it. The police were part of it. The judge was part of it. Everyone his mama had ever told him to trust if he was in trouble. All of them were the trouble. But Karen had seen his code, and the biker had followed, and someone had written "Help is coming" on the back of a receipt. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulled out the receipt, couldn't read it in the dark but held it against his chest anyway. Help is coming. Stay brave. You're safe now. He believed it. He had to believe it. Because if help wasn't coming, then tomorrow at 3 o'clock a man named Dimitri was going to take him away, and he would never see his mama again, and nobody would ever know what happened to Ethan James Cooper. But somewhere outside in the Tennessee night, 60 men in leather vests were watching every door and window of this house. And 3 black SUVs carrying federal agents and warrants were 12 minutes away. And a cashier who'd noticed 2 egg cartons was sitting by her phone praying. And a mother in a police station parking lot was holding on to hope with both hands. And a biker named Rattler, who'd lost his own daughter to this same machine 8 years ago, was sitting in his truck 3 houses away, making a promise to a boy he'd barely met. I couldn't save Sophie that day, but I can save you. And by saving you, maybe I can finally find her. Rattler's radio crackled one final time. Tank's voice, tight, charged. 3 vehicles approaching from the north, black SUVs, federal plates. FBI is here, brothers. This is it. Rattler closed his eyes, opened them, looked at the house where a 6-year-old Cub Scout sat in the dark, holding a grocery receipt against his heart. Copy that, Rattler said. All units maintain position. Document everything. Nobody moves until those agents have the kids safe in their hands. He paused, then added something that wasn't tactical, wasn't operational, wasn't anything they'd trained for. We've waited 8 years for this, brothers. Tonight, we get it right. The first SUV stopped at the curb in front of 1134 Orchard Lane at 7:28. No sirens, no flashing lights. Just 3 black vehicles rolling to a stop with the quiet precision of people who'd done this 100 times before. Diana Reeves stepped out of the lead vehicle, body armor over her blouse, badge on her hip, warrant folded in her left hand, Glock holstered on her right. 12 agents fanned out behind her, 4 to the back of the house, 2 covering the side exits, 6 stacked at the front door. Tank's voice came through the radio one final time. All brothers hold. This is their show now. Eyes and cameras only. 60 Hell's Angels didn't move, didn't breathe loud, just watched. Diana walked up the front steps, raised her fist. 3 knocks, hard, each one rattling the door in its frame. FBI, we have a federal search warrant and arrest warrants for Travis Dunn, Linda Hargrove, and Wayne Caldwell. Open this door now. Inside, the spaghetti fork hit Linda's plate with a clatter. Travis shot to his feet so fast his chair fell backward and cracked against the floor. Sheriff Caldwell froze with his coffee cup halfway to his lips. "That's not possible," Caldwell whispered. His face went the color of old paper. "That's not... How is that possible?" Travis was already moving. Toward the back, toward the kitchen door. Survival instinct overriding everything else. "Sit down," Caldwell hissed. "Running makes it worse. We lawyer up and say nothing." 3 more knocks, louder. "FBI, you have 10 seconds to open this door or we breach." Linda stood up. Her hands were shaking so hard the wine glass she'd been holding slipped and shattered on the kitchen tile. "Wayne! Wayne, do something. You're the sheriff. Tell them it's a mistake." "Shut up, Linda. Open this door. 5 seconds." Travis looked at the basement door, looked at the back door, looked at Caldwell. His brain was running calculations. The kid in the basement was evidence. If they couldn't find the kid, "Don't even think about it," Caldwell said, reading his face. "You touch that boy and they'll add murder charges. Open the front door. Now." Travis walked to the door. His hand trembled on the knob. He turned it. 12 federal agents poured through the opening like water breaking through a dam. Diana Reeves first. Badge up. Voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Travis Dunn, you are under arrest for kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to traffic a minor. Hands behind your back. Now." Travis put his hands up, then behind his back. The handcuffs clicked. One agent pushed him toward the door. Another read him Miranda while Travis stared at the floor and said nothing. Diana turned to the kitchen. Linda stood behind the table as if a piece of furniture could protect her from what was coming. "Linda Hargrove, you are under arrest on the same charges. Turn around." "I want a lawyer," Linda said. Her voice cracked on the second word. "I want a lawyer right now. I have rights." "You do, and they're being read to you right now. Turn around." Linda turned. Handcuffs. Miranda. Another agent guiding her toward the front door. Diana looked at Sheriff Caldwell. He was still sitting at the kitchen table, coffee cup still in his hand, badge still on his chest. He hadn't moved. Wayne Caldwell. "Agent Reeves, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm here in an official capacity. Sheriff's welfare check. The judge asked me to..." "Save it for your attorney." Diana's voice didn't rise, but it hardened into something that made 2 of her own agents glance over. "You are under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to traffic minors, accessory to kidnapping, and evidence tampering. You have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you use it." Caldwell set down the coffee cup, slow, deliberate, like a man trying to maintain dignity while his entire world collapsed around him. He stood, extended his hands. "I'll have your badge for this," he said quietly. Diana cuffed him herself, tight, professional, looked him straight in the eye from 6 inches away. "No, Sheriff, I'll have yours." She turned to her team. "Clear the house, find the child, now." 2 agents moved to the basement door, found it locked. One kick broke it open, footsteps pounding down wooden stairs. Ethan heard them coming. Heavy boots, multiple people, moving fast. His whole body clenched. He scrambled to his feet, pressing himself into the corner so hard the concrete bit into his shoulder blades. This was it. Either help had come, or Dimitri had come early, and everything was over. The door at the bottom of the stairs opened. A woman stood there. Black windbreaker, yellow letters across the chest. FBI. She had her weapon drawn but lowered it the instant she saw him. Her partner did the same. "Ethan Cooper?" He nodded, couldn't speak. His mouth was open but nothing came out. The tears had started and he couldn't stop them, and he didn't try because for the first time in 10 hours, he didn't have to pretend to be brave. "I'm Special Agent Diana Reeves. You're safe now, Ethan. Nobody is going to hurt you. We're taking you out of here, and we're taking you to your mom." "My mom?" His voice broke into pieces on those two words. They told me she didn't want me. They told me..." "They lied, Ethan. Your mom has been trying to find you since the moment you were taken. She's waiting for you right now." Ethan's legs gave out. He didn't fall because Diana crossed the basement in 3 steps and caught him, lifted him up, held him against her body armor, and felt this small, trembling child press his face against her shoulder and sob so hard his whole body shook. "You're safe," she said again. "I've got you. You're done being brave by yourself." She carried him up the stairs, through the kitchen where spaghetti was still warm on the counter and a shattered wine glass lay on the floor, through the living room where agents were photographing and cataloging, out the front door into the Tennessee night. Doc Kowalski came through the perimeter 60 seconds later, medical kit in hand, Hell's Angels patches visible under his open jacket. FBI agents let him pass without a word. Diana had authorized civilian medical support in advance. Doc knelt next to Ethan on the front lawn. Gentle hands, calm voice. The hands of a man who'd treated wounded Marines in Afghanistan and crying children at free clinics and everything in between. "Hey there, buddy. I'm Doc. I'm a paramedic. I'm going to check you over real quick. Make sure everything's working right. That okay with you?" Ethan nodded, wiped his nose with the back of his hand. Doc worked fast but thorough. Pulse, temperature, eyes, reflexes. Examined the rope burns on both wrists where Ethan had been tied in the car trunk. Checked the bruising on his upper arms where Travis had grabbed him. Felt the slight swelling on the back of his head from where he'd been pushed down the basement stairs. "He's dehydrated," Doc told Diana. "Mild hypothermia. Rope burns, bruising, contusion on the posterior skull. Sedative still metabolizing. Probably midazolam based on the symptoms. He needs IV fluids, full pediatric evaluation, and a warm bed. But he's stable. Strong kid." Doc looked down at Ethan, and his gruff, weathered face softened into something that looked like pride. "Really strong kid." Diana crouched to Ethan's level. "Ethan, can you tell me who took you from the courthouse today?" "Travis, the security man. He gave me juice and it made me dizzy. Then he put me in his car, in the trunk." Ethan's voice was quiet but clear, every word precise. 6 years old and giving testimony like a witness twice his age. "He said Judge Caldwell told him to take me. He said my mom signed papers, but she didn't. She wouldn't do that. He said if I talked, he'd call someone and my mom would be dead." "What about tomorrow? Did you hear them talk about tomorrow?" "A man named Dimitri. He's coming at 3 o'clock. To the warehouse on Route 9. Travis said I was worth $180,000. Ethan looked up at Diana. "What does that mean? Why am I worth money?" Diana's jaw tightened so hard the muscles in her neck stood out. She'd been doing this for 14 years and the question still hit her like a fist in the chest. "It means bad people wanted to take you far away. But that's never going to happen, Ethan. Not to you. Not ever." "What about the other kids?" Diana blinked. "What other kids?" "I heard Travis talking to the lady, Linda. He said he'd done this 20 times. That means there are other kids, right? Kids like me who got taken?" 14 years in the FBI. Diana Reeves had interviewed hundreds of victims, witnesses, suspects. She'd heard things that woke her up at 3 in the morning. But a 6-year-old lying in the dark of a basement, terrified, drugged, hours from being sold, and still thinking about the other children. "We're going to find all of them," Diana said. "I promise you." "Because of my grocery code?" Because of your grocery code. Ethan almost smiled, didn't quite make it, but something in his eyes shifted, a spark. The first one since Travis Dunn had handed him that apple juice 12 hours ago. At 7:55, a police escort brought Jenny Cooper to Orchard Lane. She'd been in the parking lot of the sheriff's station for 5 hours. 5 hours of crying and calling numbers that rang to voicemail, and begging dispatchers who told her there was nothing they could do. 5 hours of making missing child flyers on her phone with shaking hands and a photo of Ethan in his Cub Scout uniform that she'd taken 2 weeks ago. Then the call came. FBI agent Diana Reeves. Mrs. Cooper, we have your son. He's alive. He's safe. We're bringing you to him right now. Jenny hadn't believed it, couldn't let herself believe it. Not until the police car pulled onto Orchard Lane and she saw the FBI vehicles and the ambulance, and then she saw him. Ethan, standing on the front lawn, Doc's jacket wrapped around his small shoulders, blanket over that. Still in his Cub Scout uniform, Jenny was out of the car before it fully stopped. Running. One shoe came off and she didn't stop, didn't slow down. FBI agents at the perimeter stepped aside without being asked because there is no force in the world that stops a mother running toward her child. Ethan! He turned, saw her. His face crumbled. Mama! They collided in the middle of the yard. Jenny dropped to her knees, and Ethan crashed into her so hard they almost tipped over. Her arms wrapped around him, and she pulled him against her chest and held on like the earth itself was trying to tear him away. Mama, I knew you didn't give me up. I knew they were lying. I knew you were looking for me. I never stopped, baby. Jenny was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Not for 1 second. Not for 1 second did I stop. They said you signed papers. They said you didn't want me anymore. That is a lie. That is the biggest lie anyone has ever told. I want you more than anything in this world. I fought for you every single day. I went to the police. I called everyone I could. Nobody would listen to me, Ethan. Nobody would help. But I never, ever stopped. I know, Mama. I know. That's why I spelled the code. Because I knew you'd never give up, so I couldn't give up either. Jenny pulled back just enough to look at his face, touched his cheeks, his forehead, his hair, checking that he was real, that he was whole, that he was here. What code, baby? At the grocery store, I spelled help with the food. Bread, eggs, lemon, pickles, mustard, eggs. BELPME. The cashier lady saw it. Karen. She called her brother and he followed us. Jenny looked up, past the FBI agents, past the ambulance, past the news van that had just arrived. She looked across the dark street and saw them. Bikers. Dozens of them. Standing beside motorcycles. Standing on sidewalks. Standing in driveways. Silent. Arms crossed. Leather vests. Watching. Who are they? Jenny whispered. Diana stepped forward. Hell's Angels, Virginia chapter. The cashier who spotted Ethan's code, her brother is a member. He followed Travis's vehicle here and coordinated surveillance until we arrived. They've been protecting your son for the last 3 hours. Jenny stood up. Ethan's hand gripped tightly in hers. She looked at the bikers again. 60 men who looked like everything society had taught her to be afraid of. 60 men who'd spent 3 hours in the dark watching over her son. Thank you, she said, not loud enough for them to hear. But Tank saw her lips move, saw the tears. He raised his fist. 60 brothers followed. Silent salute to a mother holding her son on the worst and best night of her life. Rattler stood apart from his brothers, 30 feet from the reunion, back against his truck, arms crossed, watching Jenny hold Ethan the way he should have held Sophie 8 years ago, the way he dreamed of holding Sophie every night since. That could have been me, should have been me. His phone buzzed. Tank. Brother, come here. There's something you need to hear. Rattler walked over. Tank's face was strange, Tight, but not with anger. Something else. Something Rattler hadn't seen on Tank's face in years. Hope. Wire just sent a final report to Diana. Full financial breakdown of Caldwell's operation. Transaction records for all 19 children. And? Tank held his phone out. Wire's voice came through on speaker. Clear. Measured. But underneath it something's shaking. Rattler, I found her. Rattler stopped breathing. Transaction dated September 14th, 2017. 7-year-old female, brown hair, green eyes, 42 inches tall. Physical description matches Sophie Grace Holloway exactly. Sold to a buyer in Bucharest, Romania, through Dmitry Volkov for $160,000. Buyer is listed as George Marin. New identity assigned, Elena Marin. Rattler's hand went to the side of the truck, not for balance, for something to hold on to because the ground under his feet had just disappeared. You're telling me? I'm telling you she's in Volkov's records. Same buyer, same network, same operation that took Ethan today. If FBI gets Volkov to cooperate and he's landing in Atlanta tonight with federal agents waiting at the gate, they can trace her. They can find her, Rattler. Tank grabbed Rattler's arm, steadied him. Rattler's eyes were wet and he didn't care. 8 years. 8 years of searching. 8 years of dead ends and slammed doors, and a sheriff who'd told him to stop looking, and a system that had swallowed his daughter and sealed the records and told him to move on. She's alive? Rattler's voice cracked on the word. As of Volkov's last proof of life check 6 months ago, she's alive. She's 15. She's enrolled in an international school in Bucharest. Rattler, that little boy's grocery code just cracked the whole thing open. Everything connects. Sophie's case, Ethan's case, all 19 of them. Same network, same people. And now FBI has it all. Rattler turned away from his brothers, walked 10 feet, stopped, put both hands on the hood of his truck, and leaned forward and tried to breathe. 8 years. He'd searched for 8 years, driven to every state on the eastern seaboard following tips that led nowhere. Spent every dollar he had on private investigators who found nothing. Sat in that parking lot at Freshway Market night after night, watching for something, anything, any sign that would tell him where his baby girl had gone. And a 6-year-old Cub Scout who'd been brave enough to spell help with groceries had just given him the answer. Tank walked over, stood beside him, didn't say anything, just put his hand on Rattler's back and held it there while Rattler bent over the hood of his truck and cried for the first time in 8 years. Diana Reeves found Rattler 10 minutes later. She extended her hand, Raymond Holloway. Rattler straightened up, wiped his face, took her hand. Yes, ma'am. Your sister's phone call and your surveillance operation made this rescue possible. On behalf of the Bureau, thank you. The kid deserves the credit. He's the one who spelled it out. He does, but so do you. Diana paused, looked at him with eyes that held something beyond professional gratitude. I read the file on your daughter, Sophie, 2017. Rattler's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes flickered like a candle in a draft. What about it? We're reopening the investigation. The financial records Wire uncovered show a transaction that matches Sophie's disappearance exactly. Same buyer network, same timeline, same operation. Dmitry Volkov, the buyer scheduled to pick up Ethan tomorrow, handled Sophie's sale in 2017. Rattler couldn't swallow. You're saying what I think you're saying. I'm saying we're bringing Volkov in tonight. He's landing at Hartsfield in 2 hours. Agents are already at the gate. When he cooperates, and with federal trafficking charges carrying life sentences, he will cooperate. We'll have addresses, locations, names, including Sophie's. How long? 72 hours, maybe less if Volkov talks fast. Rattler looked past Diana toward the front yard where Jenny was still holding Ethan. Mother and son, together, safe. He thought about Sophie, 15 years old now, living under a name that wasn't hers, in a country she'd never chosen, believing her father had let her go. "I'm going to bring her home," Rattler said. Not a question, not a request, a statement of fact from a man who'd waited 8 years and would wait 8 more if he had to, but wouldn't wait 1 second longer than necessary. "We're going to help you do exactly that," Diana said. At 8:15, with Ethan loaded into an ambulance and Jenny beside him holding his hand, with Travis Dunn and Linda Hargrove and Sheriff Wayne Caldwell sitting in separate FBI vehicles in handcuffs, with 60 Hells Angels standing in silent formation across 4 blocks of a suburban neighborhood they guarded for 3 hours, Diana Reeves made one more call. "This is Agent Reeves. I need a team dispatched to Judge Nancy Caldwell's residence immediately. Arrest warrant for kidnapping, conspiracy to traffic minors, corruption, wire fraud. She is to be taken into custody tonight. No delays, no courtesy calls, no warnings." She hung up, looked at the house at 11340 Orchard Lane one last time. Spaghetti still on the counter, wine glass still shattered on the floor, basement door still hanging open where her agents had kicked it in. 19 children had passed through that basement. 19 families had been torn apart. 19 mothers had been told, "Nobody believes you. Go home. Stop asking questions." Number 20 was in an ambulance with his mother, alive, safe, going home. And the woman who'd orchestrated all of it was about to find out that her 18-year empire had been brought down by 6 grocery items and a 6-year-old boy who refused to be silent. At 8:40, Judge Nancy Caldwell sat in her chambers at Harlan County Courthouse, reviewing tomorrow's docket. Custody case at 9, adoption hearing at 11, lunch with the county commissioner at noon. Normal day, routine schedule, the kind of day she'd been having for 18 years while children disappeared from her courtroom and reappeared in her offshore bank account. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, Linda's number. "Everything on track?" she answered. Silence. Then a male voice. Calm, professional, devastating. "Judge Caldwell, this is Special Agent Michael Torres, FBI. Linda Hargrove, Travis Dunn, and your brother Wayne Caldwell are in federal custody. Ethan Cooper has been recovered. We have warrants for your arrest on charges of kidnapping, conspiracy to traffic children, corruption, and wire fraud. Agents are en route to your location now. You can surrender voluntarily, or we can come to you." Nancy Caldwell's hand went white around the phone. She sat perfectly still for 3 seconds, the kind of stillness that comes from a brain running through every option and finding nothing. "I don't know what you're talking about." 19 sealed cases over 7 years, Judge. Identical patterns. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands totaling $3.8 million. Communications with Dmitry Volkov. Transaction records for every child sold to your courtroom. Audio recording of your brother discussing tomorrow's sale while sitting in Linda Hargrove's kitchen 40 minutes ago. We have everything. Nancy ended the call, sat motionless for exactly 5 seconds. Then she opened her desk drawer. Burner phone, passport, an envelope with $12,000 cash. She could run, drive to Nashville, catch a flight, be in a country without extradition by morning. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and heard the sirens. FBI vehicles pulling into the courthouse parking lot, doors opening, boots on pavement, voices coordinating, coming through the main entrance, coming up the stairs. Judge Nancy Patricia Caldwell, family court judge for 18 years, community pillar, churchgoer, woman who'd shaken hands with governors and senators and smiled for newspaper photos, was arrested at 8:52 in her own chambers while her hand was still inside the desk drawer, reaching for the passport. She didn't resist, didn't run, didn't say a word except 5 that every guilty person says when the walls close in. "I want my attorney." They put her in handcuffs, the same hands that had signed 19 removal orders, 19 sealed records, 19 documents that erased children from the system and deposited money into an account in the Cayman Islands. Those hands, cuffed behind her back, walked her out through the courthouse she'd controlled for 2 decades. News cameras were waiting outside. The footage would lead every broadcast by morning. A judge in handcuffs, a trafficking ring inside the courts, the kind of story that makes people question everything they thought they knew about the systems designed to protect their children. At Farmville Medical Center, Ethan sat in a hospital bed eating cherry jello. Jenny sat beside him, her chair pulled so close their knees touched. Doc had arranged a private room, security outside the door, 2 FBI agents in the hallway. Ethan was going to be okay. Dehydrated, bruised, traumatized in ways that would take months and years to fully understand, but physically intact. No broken bones, no serious injuries. The sedative had mostly cleared his system. His vital signs were stable. "Mama," Ethan said between bites of jello. "Yeah, baby." "Is the biker man here? The one Karen called? The big one with the tattoos?" "You mean Rattler?" "I don't know his name. He followed us. He nodded at me in the store, like he was telling me I wasn't alone." "I think he's outside. You want to see him?" Ethan nodded. Jenny stepped into the hallway, found Rattler sitting on a bench near the nurse's station, head in his hands, elbows on his knees. He looked like a man who'd been carrying something impossibly heavy for 8 years and was only now realizing he might be allowed to set it down. "Ethan wants to see you." Rattler looked up. His eyes were red, raw. He looked nothing like the terrifying biker who'd walked into Freshway Market 4 hours ago. He looked like a father. "He wants to thank me." "Yes. Kid saved himself. He's the hero in this. He doesn't see it that way. Will you come?" Rattler stood, followed Jenny into the room. Ethan looked small in the hospital bed, 6 years old. Cub Scout uniform folded on the chair beside him, blanket pulled to his chest, cherry jello on his chin. When he saw Rattler, he sat up straighter. "Mr. Rattler?" Rattler pulled a chair over, sat down slow so he was at eye level, close enough to talk quiet. "Just Rattler's fine, buddy. Karen said you followed us, kept watching the house, called the FBI." "That's right. She also said..." Ethan paused. His lower lip trembled, but he pushed through it. "She said you lost your little girl, a long time ago, from the same parking lot." Rattler's throat tightened. He nodded. Couldn't trust his voice for a second. "Sophie. She was 7 when they took her. 8 years ago." "Did they find her?" "Not yet, but because of what you did today, because you spelled that code and we caught these people, the FBI found records. They know where she might be. They're working right now to bring her home." Ethan's eyes filled. "I'm glad. I'm really, really glad." "Ethan," Rattler leaned forward, "what you did today took more guts than most grown men have in their whole lives. You were drugged. You were threatened. They told you your mama would die if you spoke. And you didn't speak. You spelled. You used your brain. You asked for help in a way nobody expected, and somebody saw it. You saved yourself, buddy. And because you did, we're going to find 19 other kids, including my Sophie. You understand what that means?" Ethan shook his head. "It means you're not just brave. You're a hero. A real one." "I was so scared, Rattler. I was so scared the whole time." Rattler looked at this boy, this small, trembling, cherry jello-covered boy who'd done something extraordinary. Being scared and doing it anyway. That's what courage actually is. Anybody who tells you different doesn't know what they're talking about. Ethan wiped his eyes with his blanket, then looked up with something new in his face, something brighter than fear. "Will you teach me about motorcycles when I'm bigger?" Rattler smiled. First real smile in 8 years, and it felt like breaking the surface after being underwater for so long he'd forgotten what air tasted like. "Yeah, buddy, I'd be honored." Outside the hospital, 60 Hell's Angels who'd surrounded Linda Hargrove's house now stood in formation in the parking lot. They hadn't left. Wouldn't leave until Ethan was discharged and home safe with his mother. Tank stood at the front, arms crossed, watching the hospital entrance like a sentry who'd forgotten how to stand down. When Rattler walked out 20 minutes after sitting with Ethan, Tank raised his fist. 60 brothers raised theirs. Silent salute. Not for themselves, for a 6-year-old who'd spelled help, and a father who might finally get his daughter back. Rattler stopped, looked at his brothers, these men who'd searched with him for 8 years, who'd driven with him to dead-end towns following tips that went nowhere, who'd stood beside him at every memorial for Sophie that he'd held because he refused to hold a funeral for a child he believed was alive. "Thank you," Rattler said. 2 words, barely above a whisper, but every man heard them. "We're not done yet, brother," Tank said. "Volkov lands in Atlanta in 90 minutes. FBI's waiting. When he talks, and he will talk, we're going to know where every one of those kids ended up, including Sophie." Rattler nodded, couldn't speak anymore, walked to his truck, sat behind the wheel, stared at nothing. His phone buzzed. "Karen. How's Ethan?" "He's going to be okay. Tough kid. Toughest I've ever seen." "And you? How are you?" Rattler was quiet for a long moment. "Wire found Sophie in the records, Karen. Transaction from 2017. Same buyer network. FBI thinks she's in Bucharest. They're going after Volkov tonight." Karen made a sound on the other end. Not a word, just a sharp exhale that carried 8 years of watching her brother suffer. "Oh God, Rattler, oh God. I can't feel it yet. I can't let myself feel it until she's standing in front of me. Because if I feel it now and it falls apart, it's not going to fall apart, not this time." "You don't know that." "I do know that, because that little boy spelled help in my checkout lane today, and I saw it, and you followed it, and the whole thing cracked open. That doesn't happen by accident. That's something bigger than accident. You're going to get her back." Rattler closed his eyes, leaned his head against the seat. "I hope you're right." "I'm always right, you know that." He almost laughed. Almost. At 10:14 that night, Dmitry Volkov's flight from Philadelphia touched down at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Gate B-17. He walked off the plane carrying a leather briefcase and a phone with encrypted messages detailing tomorrow's pickup. 6-year-old male, Cedar Falls, Tennessee, Route 9 warehouse, 3 o'clock, 180,000. Cash. He was thinking about dinner. Maybe that steak place near his hotel. A good bottle of red. Early night. Long drive tomorrow morning. He was not thinking about the 4 federal agents standing near the Cinnabon 40 feet from his gate. Volkov made it through the jetway, into the terminal. 12 steps past the gate counter before he saw the badges. 4 of them, moving toward him in a formation that left nowhere to go except backward, and 2 more agents had already closed that gap behind him. He ran anyway. Instinct. Dropped the briefcase, bolted left toward the food court, made it maybe 30 feet before Agent Marcus Cole, 6'2", 220, former college linebacker, hit him at full speed and drove him into the tile floor between a Sbarro and a Hudson News. The briefcase popped open when it hit the ground. Cash. $40,000 in bound stacks. Travel documents for a child that didn't match any legal adoption paperwork. And a phone that would, within 24 hours, give the FBI everything they needed to dismantle 7 years of international child trafficking. Dmitry Volkov, you are under arrest for conspiracy to traffic minors, international kidnapping, money laundering, and about 15 other things we'll discuss in detail once you've had time to think about how long you'd like to spend in a federal prison. Volkov's face pressed against the airport tile, blood from his split lip pooling under his cheek. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one. But first I want you to think about a number. Life. That's the number. Life in a federal supermax. No parole, no deals, No sunlight, unless you have something to trade. They hauled him up, cuffed him, walked him through the terminal while 300 travelers stopped and stared and pulled out their phones to record a man in a business suit, bleeding from the mouth, being escorted by FBI agents past the Chick-fil-A. By Thursday morning, 20 hours after Ethan spelled his code, Volkov was sitting in an interrogation room at the Nashville FBI field office. His attorney sat beside him, legal pad untouched, face gray. Diana Reeves sat across the table, calm, patient, a manila folder in front of her that contained enough evidence to put Volkov away for 3 lifetimes. Here's what's happening, Dmitri. Diana opened the folder, spread photos across the table. 19 children, school photos, family photos, missing person flyers that mothers had made and nobody had distributed. You bought these children from Judge Nancy Caldwell's network over 7 years. You sold them to buyers in Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, and Poland. We have financial records, communication logs, transaction receipts, and a 6-year-old witness who can identify every member of the domestic operation. We also have full cooperation from Travis Dunn, Linda Hargrove, and Dr. Robert Langley. They're all talking, every single one of them. Volkov stared at the photos. His attorney whispered something in his ear. Volkov shook his head. What I need from you, Diana continued, is what they can't give me. Buyer names, addresses, current locations of every child you placed overseas, proof of life records, all of it. And if I give you all of it, then we talk about a number that isn't life. Volkov looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked at the photos, looked at the folder, looked at the federal charges listed on the first page, leaned over and whispered again, longer this time. Volkov turned back to Diana. I want 45 years, not life, 45. Federal facility, not state, and protective custody. The buyers I sold to, they're not the kind of people who appreciate witnesses. You give me everything, every child, every buyer, every address, complete records, nothing held back. I find out you left out so much as a middle name and the deal's off and you rot. Everything. Diana slid a legal pad across the table. Start writing. Volkov wrote for 6 hours. His hand cramped twice. He kept writing. 19 children, 19 names, ages at time of sale, dates, buyer information, countries, cities, addresses, current identities, school enrollment where applicable, proof of life photos he'd required from every buyer as insurance against non-payment. Child number 7 on his list, Sophie Grace Holloway, age 7 at time of sale, September 2017. Buyer, George Marin, Bucharest, Romania. Payment, $160,000. New identity, Elena Marin. Current enrollment, International School of Bucharest. Last proof of life photo, May 2024. 15 years old, brown hair, green eyes, alive. Diana stared at that entry for 10 seconds. Then she picked up her phone and called Rattler. 11 p.m. Thursday night. Rattler was sitting in his truck in the Freshway Market parking lot, same spot he'd been sitting every night for 8 years. Engine off, windows down, radio quiet, watching the parking space where Sophie had been standing the last time he saw her. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer. 8 years of phone calls that led nowhere had trained him to expect nothing. Mr. Holloway, this is Agent Reeves. Tell me. Volkov cooperated fully. 6 hours of testimony, complete records for all 19 children. Diana paused, the kind of pause that carries weight. Your daughter is confirmed alive. Sophie Grace Holloway, living as Elena Marin in Bucharest, Romania. Enrolled in International School of Bucharest. We have her address. We have a proof of life photograph dated 5 months ago. She appears healthy. Romanian authorities are coordinating with our office right now. We're targeting extraction within 72 hours. Rattler's hand dropped to his lap. The phone stayed pressed to his ear, but he couldn't hold it properly anymore. His fingers had stopped working. She's alive. She's alive. You're sure? Volkov provided photographs, school records, and a current address. We're sure. Rattler tried to say something else, tried to ask when he could see her, tried to ask about the flight, the logistics, the paperwork, but his throat had closed and his eyes had blurred, and the only thing that came out was a sound that wasn't a word. It was 8 years of grief and rage and hope compressed into a single broken exhale. Mr. Holloway, are you all right? Yeah. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Yeah. When? We'll have a timeline within 24 hours. I'll call you personally. Agent Reeves. Yes? That boy, Ethan. He did this. A 6-year-old did what the entire system couldn't do in 8 years. I know. And we're going to make sure the system never fails like this again. Rattler hung up, set the phone on the dashboard, looked through the windshield at the parking lot where Sophie had stood 8 years ago. Right there, 20 feet from where he was sitting. She'd been wearing a yellow dress, her favorite. She'd been holding a popsicle from the freezer section. Cherry, her favorite too. She'd looked up at him and said, "Daddy, can we get another one for tomorrow?" And he'd said, "Sure, baby girl." And then Christine had said she'd load the car and Rattler had gone back inside for milk. And when he came out, 45 seconds later, Sophie was gone and Christine was screaming, and the yellow dress and the cherry popsicle were on the ground next to the shopping cart, and his life ended. 8 years. And now, because a boy had been brave enough to spell help with bread and eggs and lemon and pickles and mustard and eggs, it was starting again. Tank found him in the parking lot 20 minutes later. Rattler was standing outside his truck, not leaning, not sitting, just standing, looking at the sky. Tank walked up, didn't ask questions, just stood beside him. "She's alive, Tank." Rattler's voice was raw, stripped of everything except the truth. "She's in Bucharest. She's 15. She's going to school. She's alive." Tank grabbed him, pulled him in, held him the way only a brother can hold a brother. "We're bringing her home. You hear me? We're bringing all of them home." The recovery operation launched within 48 hours. Interpol coordinated with authorities in 4 countries: Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, Poland. 19 files, 19 children, 19 extraction plans developed simultaneously by the largest joint child recovery operation in FBI history. The first 3 children were recovered in Moldova within a week. Sisters, ages 9 and 11 at the time of sale, now 12 and 14, living with a couple in Chisinau who'd paid Volkov $200,000 for both. The girls didn't speak English anymore. They spoke Romanian. They didn't remember their mother's face, but they remembered her voice. And when an FBI translator played a recording Jenny Cooper's lawyer had obtained from the original custody hearing, the mother's voice pleading with Judge Caldwell to not take her children, both girls started crying. 4 more recovered in Ukraine, 2 in Poland, 3 found in the United States under falsified adoption papers, 2 in Virginia, 1 in North Carolina, living in nice houses with people who'd paid 6 figures and been told the children were legal orphans from impoverished families who couldn't care for them. Every recovery broke something open. Every reunion was a wound healing. Every child who came home was proof that the system's failure wasn't permanent, that what had been broken could be put back together, slowly, painfully, but together. The trial started in February, 3 months after Ethan's rescue. The courtroom was packed every day. National media, local families, mothers who'd lost children and spent years being told they were crazy, unfit, disposable. They sat in the gallery and they watched. Judge Nancy Caldwell's trial lasted 9 days. The prosecution was methodical, devastating. 19 sealed case files, offshore bank records, Volkoff's testimony, Travis Dunn's testimony, Linda Hargrove's testimony, audio recordings from Hammer's directional microphone, Wire's forensic analysis of financial transactions, Ethan Cooper's testimony given via closed-circuit video because the court psychologist, a new one, a real one, determined that facing his abuser in person would cause severe trauma to a 6-year-old. Ethan sat in a small room with his mother and a victim's advocate and answered every question clearly and calmly. And when the prosecutor asked him why he'd spelled help with groceries instead of asking for help with words, Ethan said, "Because Travis told me my mama would die if I talked. So I didn't talk. I spelled. My den leader told me if you can't use your voice, use your brain. So I used my brain." The defense argued insufficient evidence of direct involvement, claimed subordinates had acted independently, portrayed Nancy Caldwell as a dedicated judge who'd been manipulated by corrupt staff. The jury didn't buy a single word. Guilty, all counts. 19 counts kidnapping, 19 counts conspiracy to traffic, wire fraud, corruption, money laundering, 90 minutes of deliberation, one of the shortest in Tennessee federal court history. The sentencing judge, brought in from out of state because every local judge had conflicts, looked at Nancy Caldwell standing in her orange jumpsuit and spoke words that every mother in that gallery had waited years to hear. "Ms. Caldwell, you held a position of profound public trust. Parents brought their most vulnerable, their children, before your bench believing you would protect them. Instead, you weaponized the power of the court to steal children from their mothers and sell them for profit. You exploited poverty. You exploited fear. You exploited a system designed to protect the innocent. There is no sentence sufficient to address the scope of what you've done, but the law requires me to try. You are sentenced to 19 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. You will spend every remaining day of your life in federal custody." Nancy Caldwell showed nothing, stood still, stared straight ahead. The handcuffs clinked when the bailiffs turned her around and walked her out of the courtroom she'd once controlled. The gallery erupted, not cheering, something deeper than cheering. Release, years of silence breaking open. Dr. Robert Langley pleaded guilty before his trial began. 25 years federal prison, psychology license permanently revoked. His testimony against Caldwell had been part of his plea deal. He'd sat on the witness stand and described in clinical detail how he'd fabricated psychological evaluations of 19 mothers, declaring each one mentally unfit, providing Judge Caldwell with a legal foundation to remove their children. "Did you know what happened to the children after they were removed?" the prosecutor asked. Langley stared at the table. "After the third or fourth case, I suspected. But you continued. She paid me $50,000 per evaluation. Over 7 years, that was over $1 million. So you sold your professional integrity for money." Langley didn't answer. The silence was his answer. Travis Dunn received life without parole. The man who drugged children with sedative-laced juice and locked them in car trunks and told them their mothers were dead sat in the courtroom and showed no emotion when the sentence was read. He'd shown no emotion during any of his 20 operations either. Linda Hargrove received 30 years. She cried when the sentence was read. The same woman who'd told Ethan, "Eat or don't, makes no difference to me," who'd fed 19 children spaghetti in a basement before handing them over to a trafficker, sobbed in court and begged for mercy. The judge gave her none. Kyle Cooper, Ethan's biological father, the man who'd filed the custody case knowing his son would be taken and sold, was convicted of conspiracy and received 18 years. Sentencing enhancement for a parent trafficking their own child. He'd been paid $15,000 by Caldwell's network to initiate the custody filing. $15,000. That was the price he'd put on his own son. Sheriff Wayne Caldwell took a plea deal. 12 years, permanent ban from law enforcement, full cooperation with the ongoing investigation into every case he'd buried during his tenure. In his plea statement, he said he'd been protecting his sister, that family loyalty had overridden his duty. The prosecutor responded, "Your duty was to protect children. You chose to protect a trafficker. Family loyalty is not a legal defense." Dmitry Volkov received his 45 years. He'd cooperated fully, given everything: names, addresses, bank accounts, photographs, school records. His testimony alone was responsible for the recovery of 16 of the 19 children. The other 3 were located through Interpol's independent investigation using Volkov's partial records. 19 children, all found, all alive. 15 reunited with biological mothers. 2 placed with extended family members when the mothers had died during the years their children were missing. 1 mother had suffered a stroke after losing her child and was in a long-term care facility, so her child went to a loving aunt. 1 child, now 18, chose to remain in Romania with the family that had raised her, but established contact with her birth mother through video calls. And Sophie Grace Holloway came home on December 15th. Rattler drove to Nashville International Airport at 4 in the morning. The flight from Bucharest via Frankfurt wasn't due until 11, but he couldn't stay in his house anymore, couldn't sit still, couldn't look at the walls that had held 8 years of silence and grief, and photographs of a 7-year-old who was now 15. Tank met him at the airport at 6. Deacon arrived at 7. Wire, Hammer, Doc. One by one, then in groups. By 10 o'clock, 45 Hells Angels stood in the arrivals terminal. Leather vests, patches, tattooed arms, the kind of men that airport security usually watches closely. But today, airport security had been briefed. FBI had called ahead. These men were here to welcome home a child they'd spent 8 years searching for. 11:07, the arrivals board updated. Flight 714 from Frankfurt landed. At gate, Rattler stood near the customs exit. His hands were shaking. First time they'd shaken since the day Sophie disappeared. He'd kept them steady through 8 years of searching, through every dead end, through every false hope, through every night in the Freshway parking lot. But now, standing 50 feet from the doors his daughter would walk through, his hands shook like he was 20 years old again, holding her for the first time in the hospital. Tank stood to his left, Karen to his right. She'd closed Freshway early, put a sign on the door, "Family emergency, back tomorrow." She wasn't missing this. 11:22, the customs doors opened and closed. Business travelers, tourists, families with luggage carts. Not her, not yet. 11:26, the doors opened again. And there she was, 15 years old, long brown hair past her shoulders, green eyes, her mother's cheekbones, taller than Rattler had imagined, thinner than he'd hoped, wearing jeans and a gray sweatshirt and carrying a backpack that held everything she owned in the world. She stopped 3 feet past the doors, looked around the terminal, saw the crowd, saw the leather vests and the tattoos and the patches, saw Karen crying, saw Tank standing like a wall. Then she saw Rattler. 8 years since she'd seen her father's face. 8 years since being told he'd signed her away. That he didn't want her. That he'd moved on and started a new life and forgotten she existed. 8 years of believing the worst lie anyone had ever told her. Rattler walked forward, slowly, the way you approach something precious and fragile and miraculous. His hands were still shaking. His eyes were full. His chest felt like it might crack open. Missy, the nickname, the one only he'd ever used, the one from bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes, and that last day in the parking lot when she'd asked for a popsicle, and he'd said, "Sure, baby girl." Sophie's face crumbled. Every wall she'd built in 8 years of survival, every defense mechanism, every story she'd told herself about being unwanted and forgotten and disposable, all of it broke at once. "Daddy?" They met in the middle of the terminal. Rattler dropped to his knees and Sophie fell into him, and he held his daughter for the first time in 8 years. And the sound that came out of him wasn't crying, It was something deeper, something that had been locked in a cage since September 2017 and had finally been set free. I never stopped looking, Rattler whispered into her hair. Not one day, not 1 hour, not 1 minute. I searched every single day. They told me you didn't want me. Sophie's voice was muffled against his chest, small and broken, and 15 years old. They said you signed papers. They said you moved away. That was a lie, baby girl. The biggest lie anybody ever told. I wanted you every single second. I never signed anything. I never moved. I stayed right here, waiting for you. Sophie pulled back, tears streaming, looked at the men standing behind her father. Who are they? My brothers, the men who helped me search for 8 years, the men who helped find you. Tank stepped forward, extended his hand. His voice was thick in a way his brothers had never heard. Welcome home, Sophie. One by one, 45 Hell's Angels shook Sophie Holloway's hand and welcomed her home. And every person in that terminal, travelers, flight attendants, TSA agents, janitors, a grandmother in a wheelchair, a soldier in uniform, every single one of them stopped and watched a father hold his daughter and understood that they were witnessing something sacred. Karen was the last to step forward. She knelt down and took Sophie's hand. I'm Karen, your dad's sister. You're the cashier, the one who saw the boy's code. That's right. Sophie looked at Karen with eyes that held something older than 15. You saved me. You know that, right? You and that little boy. You saved all of us. Karen squeezed her hand, couldn't speak, nodded. Rattler stood up, put his arm around Sophie, felt her lean into him the way she used to when she was 7, and the world was simple and safe, and the monsters were only in storybooks. Let's go home, baby girl. Where's home? Same place it's always been. Same house. Same street. Same room. I kept everything, Sophie. Every toy. Every book. Every drawing you made. 8 years, and I didn't move a single thing because I always knew you were coming back. Sophie looked up at her father, this massive, tattooed, terrifying-looking man who'd spent 8 years keeping a 7-year-old's bedroom exactly the way she'd left it. You really never gave up? Not for 1 second, and I never will. They walked out of the terminal together, father and daughter, 45 brothers behind them, into the Tennessee sunlight. Into a world that was broken and corrupt and full of people who failed children every single day, but also full of cashiers who noticed, and boys who spelled codes, and bikers who refused to stop searching, and FBI agents who did their jobs, and brothers who showed up. Sophie got in Rattler's truck, the same black Silverado he'd been driving for 8 years. She touched the dashboard, looked at the Freshway parking stickers still on the windshield. You really sat in that parking lot every night? Every night. For 8 years? For 8 years, watching, waiting, hoping someone would give me a lead. And a 6-year-old gave you one? A 6-year-old gave me everything. Rattler started the engine, pulled out of the airport parking lot, turned toward Cedar Falls, toward home, toward a bedroom that had been waiting for 8 years. Sophie was quiet for a while. Then she reached over and put her hand on her father's arm, gentle, careful, like she was still learning that touching someone didn't mean losing them. Daddy? Yeah, baby girl. Can I meet him? Ethan, the boy who spelled the code. Rattler glanced at her, saw something in her face that looked like gratitude and grief and hope all tangled together. They met on a Saturday morning in March, 4 months after Ethan spelled his code. Rosie's Diner, 2 blocks from Freshway Market. Rattler had called Jenny the night before and asked if Ethan was ready. Jenny said he'd been asking about Sophie every week since the rescue. Every single week. Is she home yet? Did they find her? Is she okay? Sophie hadn't slept the night before. She'd sat on her bed in the room her father had kept exactly the way she'd left it 8 years ago. Stuffed animals, crayon drawings taped to the wall, a shelf of picture books she'd outgrown by a decade, and she'd stared at the ceiling and thought about a boy she'd never met who'd saved her life from a grocery store checkout lane. Rattler pulled into the diner parking lot at 8:15. Sophie sat in the passenger seat, picking at the sleeve of her sweatshirt. She'd been home for 3 months, therapy twice a week, nightmares most nights, good days and bad days, days where she laughed and days where she locked herself in the bathroom and sat in the dark because the dark felt safe. The therapist said it would take time, years maybe. Rattler didn't care how long. He had her back. Everything else was details. "You okay?" Rattler asked. "What if he doesn't like me?" "Sophie, that kid has asked about you every week for 4 months. Trust me, he likes you." They walked in. Jenny and Ethan were already in a booth near the window. Ethan had grown 2 inches since the hospital. His hair was longer. The rope-burn scars on his wrists had faded to thin white lines that you'd miss if you weren't looking. He was wearing his Cub Scout uniform because that was what he wore every time something important happened now. His den leader had told him the uniform meant he was part of something bigger than himself, and Ethan had taken that to heart. He saw Rattler first. His face lit up the way it always did when Rattler walked into a room. Then he saw the girl beside him, and he went still. Quiet. His eyes got wide. "That's her?" Ethan whispered to his mother. "That's her, baby." Ethan slid out of the booth, stood up straight, shoulders back, the way he stood when his den leader called the pack to attention. Sophie stopped 3 feet away, 15 years old, looking down at a 6-year-old who'd done what an entire system couldn't do. "Hi," Ethan said. "I'm Ethan. I know who you are." Sophie's voice cracked. She crouched down so she was at his level, eye to eye, the way Rattler had done at the hospital. "You saved my life." Ethan shook his head. "I just spelled some letters with groceries. The FBI saved everyone." "No, you did. You spelled those letters and my dad followed the car, and the FBI came and they found the records, and they found me. All of that started because you were brave enough to put eggs in a basket twice. You know that, right?" Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. This girl who'd been taken when she was his age and spent 8 years in another country with another name, believing her father had given her away. He saw the sadness in her eyes, the kind that doesn't go away with time because it's woven into everything else. "Were you scared?" Ethan asked, "when they took you?" Sophie nodded. "Every day." "Me too. I was so scared I almost didn't do the code. I almost just went with Travis and didn't do anything because I thought if I messed up, my mama would get hurt. But you did it anyway. My den leader said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared and you do the right thing anyway." Sophie reached out and took Ethan's hand, small hand and larger hand, 6 years old and 15 years old. 2 children who'd been through something that nobody should ever go through, connected by grocery items and a code that changed everything. "Thank you, Ethan." Sophie's tears came then. She didn't try to stop them. "Thank you for being brave. Thank you for spelling it. Thank you for giving my dad a reason to keep going." Ethan squeezed her hand. "You're welcome, and I'm glad you're home." They sat together in the booth, Rattler and Jenny on one side, Sophie and Ethan on the other. Pancakes and coffee and orange juice, and the kind of ordinary morning that felt miraculous because 4 months ago, none of them had believed ordinary mornings were possible anymore. Jenny looked healthier. The stress lines around her eyes had softened. She'd finished her GED 2 weeks ago, started night classes at community college, social work degree. She wanted to help other mothers navigate the system that had nearly destroyed her family. "I filed the paperwork last week," Jenny told Rattler. "Victim Advocacy Certification. There's a program through the university that partners with family courts. They train advocates to sit in on custody hearings and flag cases that don't make sense. Like someone should have done for you." like someone should have done for all of us. Every mother Caldwell targeted, 19 of us, we all went through the same thing. Filed reports, called lawyers, begged for help. And the system looked the other way every time because the system was the problem. Not anymore, Rattler said. Not anymore, Jenny agreed. But it doesn't fix itself. Someone has to stand in that courtroom and say, I'm watching. Someone has to be the person who notices. Karen noticed at the checkout lane. Someone needs to notice in the courtroom too. Rattler sipped his coffee. Thought about that. Thought about Karen at her register seeing 2 egg cartons and understanding in 5 seconds what the entire Harlan County justice system had missed for 7 years. You're going to be good at this, Jenny. I'm going to be relentless at this. There's a difference. Ethan looked up from his pancakes, syrup on his chin. Mama's going to help other kids. That's right, baby. Like I helped Sophie? Exactly like that. Ethan turned to Rattler. Can I ask you something? Anything, buddy. Why did you follow us that day? You didn't know me. You could have just let the police handle it. But you got in your truck and you followed Travis's car all by yourself. Rattler set down his coffee, looked at Ethan, thought about the answer. Not the easy answer. Not the answer that would make a good story. The real one. Because 8 years ago, nobody followed the car that took Sophie. Nobody saw her get taken. Nobody spelled a code. Nobody called for help. And the police didn't handle it because the police were part of the problem. My little girl disappeared and the system shrugged and told me to go home. So when Karen texted you about my code, I saw what my daughter might have tried to do if she'd had the chance. I saw a kid being brave when every adult around him had failed. And I saw my second chance. I couldn't save Sophie that day in 2017, but I could save you. And by saving you, we found Sophie. You understand? You didn't just save yourself, you saved 20 lives, including my daughter's. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing that the way 6-year-olds process big things. Slowly, seriously, with a weight that doesn't match their size. I want to do what you do when I grow up, Ethan said. Help kids who get taken. You've already started, buddy. You started 4 months ago with a basket of groceries. Sophie put her arm around Ethan's shoulder. He's not wrong. You started something. All those other kids who came home, that was you. It was all of us, Ethan said. Karen saw the code. Rattler followed the car. The FBI got us out. Doc checked me at the house. Tank kept everyone organized. Wire found the money. Hammer recorded everything from the roof. Everybody did something. I just spelled the letters. Rattler looked at this boy. This small, syrup-covered, impossibly brave boy sitting in a diner booth in his Cub Scout uniform, explaining teamwork to a room full of adults. You just spelled the letters, Rattler repeated, and that was everything. 6 months after the rescue, on a warm Tuesday afternoon in May, Freshway Market unveiled a plaque near the checkout lanes. The store manager had wanted to do it sooner, but Jenny asked them to wait until Sophie was home and settled enough to attend. She wanted both children there, the one who'd spelled the code and the one who'd been saved by it. Ethan stood in front of lane 2, his lane, the one where Karen had seen 2 egg cartons and changed the world. He wore his Cub Scout uniform with the honor medal pinned above his heart. The council had awarded it to him at a PAC meeting in January for demonstrating unusual courage and resourcefulness in saving his own life and enabling the rescue of 19 children. Sophie stood beside him, Rattler behind them both, Jenny on Ethan's other side, Karen next to her brother, and behind them 60 Hells Angels in formation, full patches, arms at their sides, silent. The store manager read the inscription on the plaque. On this site, a 6-year-old boy named Ethan James Cooper used intelligence and courage to signal for help by spelling help with groceries. Cashier Karen Holloway noticed his code and took immediate action. Their bravery exposed a trafficking network operating within Harlan County's family court system and led to the rescue of 20 children. This plaque honors their example. Pay attention, notice patterns, act when you see danger. One observant person can save lives. Below the text, Ethan's framed grocery receipt: bread, eggs, lemon, pickles, mustard, eggs. BELPME. And beside it, a photo of Ethan in his Cub Scout uniform, holding his honor medal. The store manager stepped back. Ethan looked at the crowd. Reporters, community members, 3 Cub Scout packs from neighboring towns, families of recovered children, FBI agents, and his Hells Angels family. "I want to say something," he said. The crowd went quiet. 60 bikers went still. Cameras focused on a 6-year-old standing in front of a grocery store plaque. Ethan's voice was steady, clear, the voice of a boy who'd been through something terrible and come out the other side with something no one could take from him. "When I was in that basement, I thought nobody saw my code. I thought maybe it was a dumb idea. Maybe the letters didn't line up right. Maybe nobody would look at the groceries and see what I was trying to say." But Karen saw it. She saw it and she didn't pretend she didn't. She didn't think someone else would handle it. She handled it. And because she handled it, I'm standing here. And Sophie's standing here. And 19 other kids are home with their families. He paused, looked at Karen. She was crying, didn't try to hide it. So if you ever see something that doesn't look right, a kid who looks scared, or someone who's trying to send a message, please don't walk past. Please don't think it's not your business. Be like Karen. Look closer. Ask questions. Make the call. Because somewhere right now, a kid might be spelling help, and they're praying somebody notices. The applause was long and real, and carried the kind of emotion that doesn't fit neatly into words. Rattler stood in the back with Sophie beside him, his arm around her shoulders, her head leaning against his chest. "He's going to do great things," Sophie said softly. "He already has," Rattler replied. That evening, after the ceremony, after the reporters left and the crowds thinned, and the 60 bikes rolled out in disciplined formation, Rattler drove Sophie home. They sat on the porch. She was doing homework. He was drinking coffee. The kind of quiet that doesn't need to be filled because the people sharing it have already said everything that matters. At Jenny's apartment, Ethan sat at the kitchen table working on his next Cub Scout project. Life-saving badge, learning CPR, water rescue, emergency response. His den leader had designed the curriculum personally after Ethan's rescue, expanding the safety awareness program to include communication under duress, pattern recognition, and nonverbal signaling. "Mama," Ethan said without looking up from his workbook. "Yeah, baby. Someday I'm going to help kids like me, kids who get taken, kids who can't talk. I'm going to teach them how to spell codes and send messages and ask for help without words." Jenny looked at her son, 6 years old, syrup stains still on his uniform from breakfast, pencil gripped in fingers that still had faint white scars on the wrists, and in his eyes something that hadn't been there before the basement, something hard and bright and unbreakable. "You already are, baby. Every kid who heard your story today is going to remember it. Every parent who saw that plaque is going to pay more attention. You already are." Ethan nodded, went back to his workbook. Normal evening, normal life. The kind of normal that took 4 months of therapy and nightmares and slow, steady healing to rebuild. But rebuilt it was, brick by brick, day by day, pancake by pancake. And at Freshway Market, the evening shift cashier started her lane. Same register, lane 2. Karen had trained her personally, had sat with her for 2 hours going over what to look for. Unusual purchase patterns, repeated items, children shopping with adults who don't quite match, kids who won't make eye contact, kids who are trying to tell you something without words. "You'll probably never see it," Karen had told her. Most cashiers go their whole careers without seeing anything like what Ethan did. But if you do see it, if something feels wrong, you don't hesitate. You don't second guess. You act. Because 4 minutes is all I had. 4 minutes between seeing those egg cartons and Travis walking back inside. And in those 4 minutes, I texted my brother, stalled the register, wrote a note, and saved a boy's life. 4 minutes. That's all it takes if you're paying attention. The new cashier scanned groceries, bread, milk, eggs, normal purchases, normal customers, normal Tuesday evening. Then a young girl stepped up to the register, maybe 8 years old, blonde hair, quiet, hands gripping a basket with careful, deliberate movements. She set the items on the belt one by one, slowly, like each one mattered. The cashier scanned them, glanced at the girl's face. The girl's eyes darted toward the door, toward a woman standing near the exit. The girl's hands were shaking slightly. The cashier paused, looked at the items again, looked at the girl. "Honey," the cashier said, leaning forward just enough, "are you okay?" And in that moment, in that simple question asked because someone was paying attention, another story began. Another child might be reached. Another life might change. Because a 6-year-old boy had taught an entire town that the only thing standing between a child and the worst thing imaginable is someone who cares enough to look twice. That's the legacy of Ethan Cooper's grocery list. Not the plaque on the wall, though it hangs there still. Not the trials or the sentences or the headlines that faded after a few weeks, the way headlines always do. Not even the 19 children recovered from 4 countries, though every one of them is a miracle. The legacy is the question, the simple, quiet, devastating question that Karen asked, and that the new cashier asked, and that anyone in the world can ask when something doesn't feel right. Are you okay? 2 words. Cheaper than groceries. Faster than a text. More powerful than 60 motorcycles and 12 FBI agents and a federal warrant combined. Are you okay? Because Ethan Cooper taught us something that no training program or awareness campaign or government initiative has ever been able to teach. He taught us that when you can't speak, you spell. When you can't fight, you think. When the system fails you, and sometimes it will fail you, you don't give up. You find another way. And Karen Holloway taught us something else. She taught us that you don't need a badge to be a protector. You don't need a gun or a leather vest or FBI credentials. You need eyes that see, a mind that questions, and the willingness to act when something feels wrong, even if you're not sure, even if it might be nothing, even if 47 other people walk past the same boy and notice nothing at all. You be the one who notices. And Rattler taught us the last piece, the piece that holds everything else together. He taught us that the scariest looking person in the room might be exactly who you need, that a man covered in tattoos and leather can be the gentlest protector a child has ever known, that the people who look respectable, who wear badges and robes and professional smiles, can be the ones who do the most damage. You cannot judge by appearances. You can only judge by actions. A judge sold children. A sheriff buried evidence. A psychologist lied. A bailiff drugged a 6-year-old. And a biker spent 8 years in a parking lot waiting for a chance to save someone else's child because he couldn't save his own. That's the truth of it. That's the whole story. One grocery list, one observant cashier, one biker who refused to give up, one FBI agent who did her job, and one 6-year-old boy who proved that courage isn't about size or age or strength. It's about choosing to act when everything inside you is screaming to be quiet and small and invisible. Ethan Cooper chose to be visible. He chose 6 items from a grocery store shelf and arranged them in a basket and carried that basket to a checkout lane and prayed that somebody would read the first letters and understand. Somebody did, and 20 children came home. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel and share it with someone who needs to remember that real protectors still exist. Comment below and tell us who your protector was. Or tell us who you protected when nobody else would. Tell us you stand with Ethan, with Karen, with Rattler, with Sophie, with every person who refuses to stay silent when they see something wrong. Because this world needs more people who pay attention. People who act. People who save lives with a simple question asked at a checkout lane because they cared enough to look closer. One grocery list, 6 letters, 20 lives. Bread, eggs, lemon, pickles, mustard, eggs. Help me. Imagine what could happen if all of us looked closer. Imagine how many children we could bring home. Imagine what would change if every person in every grocery store, every classroom, every courthouse, every neighborhood asked the question that Karen asked and the new cashier asked, and that anyone in the world can ask at any time, for free, without training, without permission, without anything except the decision to care. Are you okay? Ask it, mean it, act on the answer. That's how you spell help for someone who can't spell it for themselves.